Hi, Merry Christmas again. Only 3 days left now. We're cooking on gas. Now, this video is dedicated to Christmas in the Order of the Phoenix book. Now, this one is weird. This film completely butchered the entire Christmas sequence, to be honest. It was just completely wrong. It's not Christmassy stuff that's missed out, really. It's more everything else that happens in this book over the Christmas holiday is done incorrectly or just completely missed out from the film. Right, let's begin on that cheerful note. So, in both the book and the film, the Christmas holidays are kicked off in the exact same way. Mr. Weasley getting attacked by Nagini in the Ministry of Magic. Now, this happens like the night before the Christmas holidays begin, which is such a lovely way to kick off the Christmas festivities, isn't it? So, Harry has seen the attack in his dream, and they go and see Dumbledore, who sends Harry, Ron, Ginny, Fred and George to stay with Sirius at number 12 Grimmauld Place. Hermione isn't invited. Now, he does this because he feels that Grimmauld Place, being in London, will be much more convenient to visit Mr. Weasley in St. Mungo's Hospital compared to the Borough. So, they take a portkey and go to Grimmauld Place. So in the film, we obviously see the attack by the snake on Mr. Weasley. We see them all sat with Dumbledore in Dumbledore's office. And then it sort of goes to the first occlumency lesson with Snape, which in the book doesn't happen until after the Christmas holidays are over. And then the film just sort of cuts straight to Christmas dinner after that, where Mr. Weasley has just been miraculously cured. A quick exchange between Sirius and Harry, and then they're all suddenly back at Hogwarts and Christmas is over. Now, in the book, way more happens over Christmas. And I genuinely feel that quite a bit of it was pretty important and it would have been so good to see on the screen. So, fingers crossed for the HBO series. So, Harry, Ron, Ginny, Fred and George are all at Grimmauld Place with Sirius on the night of the attack. They basically just sit up all night waiting to hear about how Mr. Weasley is doing from Mrs. Weasley. It's really, really tense because at this point they literally don't know if he's going to survive. Harry is starting to feel really guilty because in the dream, he wasn't just watching what was happening, he was the snake in the dream. He was seeing it all from the snake's perspective. In the film, they basically cut straight from the attack to Christmas Day when Mr. Weasley's back home and cured. So we don't really get any of this tension building up, but I'm hoping in the HBO series, they'll have much more time to properly build up to this. Because they're all just sort of sat there in Grimmauld Place with Sirius, like stiff with fear. They eventually hear from Mrs. Weasley, who tells them that Mr. Weasley is going to survive, but that he's going to have to spend a bit of time in hospital. That's when they agree that they may as well just spend Christmas Day at Grimmauld Place as well, seeing as it'll be more convenient for them to visit the hospital, with it being in London. So they go to bed and agree to visit Mr. Weasley in hospital the next day. Everyone sleeps, obviously, but Harry is panicking. He's really worried that he's going to turn into a snake again and start attacking people. Since Dumbledore, at this point, has explained literally nothing to Harry about the fact that he has an insight into Voldemort's brain, Harry thinks that he turned into the snake and attacked Mr. Weasley himself. Dumbledore is so annoying in this book, right? He could have saved Harry so much stress and anxiety by just being more honest with him from the beginning. And he could have probably also saved Sirius's life. Anyway, that's a story for another time. So, they all get the train into the middle of London. The gang is Harry, Ron, Ginny, Fred and George, Mrs. Weasley, Tonks and Mad-Eye Moody. I love this, by the way. Absolute squad hitting the town. Imagine if they all just went nightclubbing. So, they get to St. Mungo's Hospital, which is basically hidden from muggles behind some grubby shop called Purge and Douse Limited. Which sounds like a funeral director's, doesn't it? So, they get to the hospital. It's a shame that we never see this place in any of the films. Maybe one day HBO can make a spin-off about St. Mungo's like Casualty or Grey's Anatomy but for wizards. Right, so they find Mr. Weasley's ward and they have a little chat with him. He's doing okay, but it turns out that the snake had some weird poison in its fangs, which is basically stopping any of Mr. Weasley's wounds from healing naturally. God, this is all so Christmassy, isn't it? So, Ron, Harry, Fred and George and Ginny go wait outside the ward to let Mad-Eye, Mrs. Weasley and Tonks chat to Mr. Weasley. Fred and George and co, naturally, want to eavesdrop on their conversation. So they use their extendable ears and place them on the ward door so that they can hear what the adults are talking about. They're basically hoping to get some information about what Mr. Weasley and the snake were both doing in the ministry in the first place. We obviously know that it's because of the prophecy that was being kept in the ministry, but they don't know this at that point. When they're eavesdropping, they overhear Mad-Eye Moody basically saying that he's worried that Voldemort was possessing Harry at the time of the attack. OMG. Right, so Harry loses his head completely, which is quite understandable. We know, and Dumbledore knew at the time, that Voldemort wasn't possessing Harry. Voldemort was possessing the snake, and Harry was seeing into Voldemort's brain at the time because of this weird connection that they have. Dumbledore would have known this, or suspected it, and he could have easily stopped all this speculation by just being open with everyone. But no, of course not. Harry freaks out. They go back to Grimmauld Place, and Harry locks himself in his room and speaks to no one. At this point, he's now completely convinced that Voldemort has possessed him, transported him to the Ministry of Magic, turned Harry into a snake, and attacked Mr. Weasley. So, now, this doesn't make any sense at all if you think about it, but Harry is obviously in a heightened state of anxiety, which is quite understandable. We've all felt anxious before when you know that you're worrying about something which doesn't really make sense, but the fear is gripping you all the same. Are you feeling the Christmas spirit? I definitely am. Seriously though, I like this bit. Harry is completely convinced that he is a danger to everyone else, as he thinks that Voldemort has got the capability to possess Harry at any time and attack people. So, Harry packs up his bags and is about to return to the Dursleys. I'm not even joking, he's so scared of himself that he wants to lock himself away from all of his friends. He's packed his trunk and he's about to escape when a portrait in the bedroom, which is Phineas Nigellus, tells him to remain where he is. Basically, Phineas Nigellus was a relative of Sirius's and a former headmaster of Hogwarts, so he's also got a portrait in the headmaster's office in Hogwarts. Dumbledore sends a message to Harry with Phineas to tell him to stay where he is. Basically, Dumbledore is so switched on and paying so much attention to Harry that he knows that Harry is freaking out, and he knows that Harry wants to run away, and he tells him not to run away. And yet, despite all of that, he can't simply tell Harry that he wasn't being possessed at the time and just explain briefly what's going on. Poor Harry goes back to bed and falls asleep and wakes up like a day later. Everyone is running about the house putting Christmas decorations up, and Harry is still locked in his room. It's been like 2 days now. And then Harry's saviour arrives, Hermione. She's just arrived from Hogwarts on the night bus. Her, Ginny and Ron go and sit down with Harry and finally have a proper chat with him. It's the first time Harry spoke to anyone since they got back from the hospital. Hermione reassures him that due to the protections at Hogwarts Castle, it would be impossible for Voldemort to transport Harry out of the castle in any magical way. Ron tells him that he was watching Harry in his bed for a minute before he woke up on the night of the attack. Bit creepy. And that he definitely didn't leave his bed. And last of all, Ginny, who let's not forget was of course possessed by Voldemort herself, tells Harry what it really feels like to be possessed. She tells him that when she was possessed, she would find herself somewhere with no memory of how she got there, and that she had massive gaps in her memory. Harry doesn't think that he's had any of that stuff happen to him, so he's finally reassured that he's not been possessed by Voldemort after all. Oh, happy days. If only Ginny had spoken to him like 2 days ago, she could have saved Harry all of the stress and anxiety. To think that Harry was genuinely considering going back to live with the Dursleys. Can you imagine if Harry did at that point go back and live with the Dursleys? Right, that's the end of the book series, everyone. Anyway, so back to the festivities. Everyone is happy now and basically spend the next week or so decorating and cleaning the house. Christmas Day arrives and it's time for the present opening. Took us a bit longer to get there this time, didn't it? Now, Harry gets for Christmas a homework planner from Hermione, lovely, a set of books about defensive magic from Sirius and Lupin, a fanged wallet from Hagrid, a small model of a firebolt from Tonks, a box of sweets from Ron, a Weasley jumper from Mrs. Weasley, and a painting of himself from Dobby, done by Dobby. Love that. Dobby should have started selling them on eBay. Could have set up his own little business and he wouldn't have had to work in the Hogwarts kitchens anymore. Nothing from the Dursleys though this year. Maybe they think he's too old for tissues now. Right, so sat down for Christmas dinner is Harry, Ron, Hermione, Fred, George, Ginny, Mrs. Weasley, Lupin, Bill, Sirius, Tonks, Mad-Eye Moody and Mundungus Fletcher. Bit of a different one this year as it's obviously not in Hogwarts, but I'm sure it's lovely all the same. Not much happens at Christmas dinner really, they just eat, and then after Christmas dinner, they all decide to go on a lovely festive trip to the hospital to visit Mr. Weasley, apart from Sirius who stays at home. There's nothing like a Christmas Day trip to the hospital, is there? But of course, with it being Christmas Day, the tube and the trains aren't running, so Mundungus Fletcher steals a car, as you do, and then magically enlarges it on the inside so that they can all fit inside it. And they go back to St. Mungo's. So they go and see Mr. Weasley and give him his presents. Harry, Ron and Hermione and Ginny go for a little stroll around the hospital to try and find the tea room. And guess who they bump into? None other than Professor Gilderoy Lockhart. You will of course remember Lockhart from the Chamber of Secrets where he comically lost his memory and it looks like he still hasn't got it back unfortunately as he's in a ward in hospital. He doesn't recognise them, but he's obviously still got some slithers of his old self in there, as he does offer them some autographs. The healer, which is basically their version of doctors, that is looking after Lockhart, thinks that Ron, Harry, Hermione and Ginny have gone to visit Lockhart, so she forces them to sit down next to him in the ward. It's a bit awkward really. The last time they saw Lockhart, he tried to wipe their memories and then accidentally wiped his own memory. So even though it's been like 3 years, they probably still aren't feeling too sorry for him to be honest. But the excitement isn't over yet because guess who else they bump into in the same ward? Neville and his grandma. Now, at this point in the story, Harry knows about Neville's parents having tragically been tortured into insanity by Bellatrix Lestrange and Barty Crouch Jr. But Ron, Hermione and Ginny don't know about this. Neville's grandma tells them all about the attack. It's a pretty sad moment to be honest. Neville's parents are still really unwell and they don't recognise Neville at all. Harry only already knew about this because he found out by accident in Dumbledore's Pensive the previous year. It's mad to think that in 5 years of knowing Neville, he never told any of them about what happened to his parents. Anyway, so on that cheerful note, they all go back to Grimmauld Place. Nothing much really happens after Christmas Day, they just sort of chill for the next week or so. On the last day of the Christmas holidays, Snape comes to visit Harry at Grimmauld Place. I know, it's so cute. Maybe he just wanted to give Harry a little Christmas present. No, it turns out that he's gone to Grimmauld Place to tell Harry that he's going to be giving him occlumency lessons in the next term to try to stop the connection between Harry and Voldemort. Sirius, though, insists on being in the room at the time. He warns Snape that if he hears from Harry that Snape has been giving Harry a hard time, he'll have him to deal with. Ooh. They end up having a full-blown argument and end up squaring up to each other with both of them pointing their wands at each other's faces. Harry is standing in between Sirius and Snape, like forcing them apart. I love this. You see, all the fun stuff happens and we miss out on all of it in the films. But then, the whole Weasley family and Hermione come walking into the room to announce that Mr. Weasley is finally back home from hospital. What a bizarre scene that must have been to walk in on. Right, so that is the end of the Christmas holidays. Harry says goodbye to Sirius, which is sadly the last time that he ever properly sees Sirius, apart from the battle at the very end of the book when Sirius dies. The gang take the night bus back to Hogwarts where they once again place themselves under the tyrannical regime of Dolores Umbridge. Oh my god, I managed to do an entire video about the Order of the Phoenix book and I didn't mention Umbridge's name once. Thank God for that. That is enough to ruin anyone's Christmas. Speaking of Umbridge though, can you imagine what Christmas dinner was like at Hogwarts this year? I bet everyone went home just to get away from her. Imagine being one of the 10 students that did stay at the school and having to sit next to her for Christmas dinner. Ooh. Right, that is the end of this video. If you enjoyed it, drop it a like and make sure you catch the next one where I'll be talking about Christmas in the Half-Blood Prince book. La 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 la.